Hello everyone. Now this one's an interesting one, okay? I want to have a bit of fun with this. I think it might be a new little series I want to create for the channel. But it's basically a nostalgia throwback episode to topics that we used to research years ago that have kind of been buried under all the new topics that have come along over the years, you know, and I think a lot of people may have forgotten about them. But they're still no less relevant today than they were when they initially became an issue, you know, when we were first pointing them out. And this one is over a decade or more in the making. This was one of the main topics I kind of first started really getting deep into when I did this. Before I even started the channel, I was in university and I noticed the lines in the sky that these planes were leaving behind, which didn't look right to me. And I did my research, you know, and I came across obviously what we used to call the chemtrails. People call it Geo Engineering as well. But we have these things called chemtrails in the sky, you know, that was the inflammatory name. And there was just so many people during the time, you know, 2010, 2011 era, who were really going hard trying to expose the truth behind the lines in the sky being purposefully sprayed chemicals by nefarious forces to do something to us or poison us. You know, there's many theories and ideas which we'll go through in the video of what was going on here. But this is just one of those retro theories, you know, that kind of people don't really talk about anymore. And I think maybe it's because it's become obvious that it's just not a conspiracy anymore. It's actually true. And it's kind of something we've ironically or weirdly just kind of become used to and accepted as a reality now and don't really fight back against or think so much about. But during the day, you know, a decade ago, this was like people were having protests about this. People were furious about these lines in the sky and they were just being brushed off as crazy, insane conspiracy theorists. You know, this is the time where the word conspiracy theorist really was like a put down, you know, like a smear against somebody. Oh, they're just wild, insane conspiracy theorists. Those things are just, you know, condensation, completely naturally occurring things, and nothing to do with chemicals being sprayed by planes at all. You know, that type of thing. Like, and people were really up in arms about this who were in the truther culture. Because this is one of the, next to the whole secret societies stuff, you know, and let's say all the stuff William Cooper talked about in Behold a Pale Horse. This was like one of those first major topics people were pointing out, you know. And I remember myself at the time, I was in university. I think it was around 2011 maybe. And I joined a group called the Lincolnshire Anti-Weather Modification Group. And this guy, he was called Peter. He was organising activist days where they would go and walk through the streets of cities or villages in the area in Lincolnshire, protesting with signs about this, you know, about the lines in the sky and the chemtrails with leaflets. And I joined them and I recorded videos of them and I made artwork about it for my university, you know, showing this group of activists, these truthers, you know. And I was on the fence myself at the time about just what was going on, but I listened to these people, and this is when I first started to learn stuff like they may have the truth, but they're not presenting it very well, and people aren't listening because of it. The things like I started to think about that type of stuff, and you know how you need to be careful when presenting the truth to people, you know, because I was watching people's reactions to this activist group trying to convince them that the lines in the sky were chemicals, and the people that gave them these looks like, okay, keep walking, no, don't look at them, son. Like, just don't make eye contact, that kind of attitude, you know. And I could see why that was the reaction, because these people did look insane, you know, and they weren't, you know, they looked rough and angry and scary, you know, and panicked, and the people weren't paying attention to them and were just saying, you guys are just crazy conspiracy theorists. But myself, you know, I empathize with them. It's like, you know, I think they're onto something is dodgy going on here, but they just don't know how to convince people of it, unfortunately. But you know, this was a big topic for me back in the day, and when you look into it, okay, there was images surfacing that showed these canisters in the hull of planes that were clearly there to pump chemicals through jet exhausts, you know. You watch the clouds in the sky as well, and you watch what happens, and it's always the same. You see the normal contrails, which is a small line behind a plane that disappears as the plane goes, you know. But these things would leave a full streak from south, from east to west, all the way across the span of the entire sky above you. And they would just spread out. And they would keep going and going until they became like a spider webby mist of like spikes and this didn't like it wasn't a cloud, it was this mess. And all these crisscrossed over lines would spread out into each other and become this whitewashed, strange looking giant spider web above us. If you've ever, I don't know, followed like a cellar spider or a daddy long leg spider as they're popularly known, they make their webs like this. Type it in and you'll see. And then look at the typical the chemtrail cloud, and they look the same, like spider webs above our heads. And there was nothing natural about them, and when light went through them, it refracted the light in such a weird oil spill looking multicolored way. It was just bizarre. And you look into it, and not only did these things behave bizarre, but then you'd look at footage of people showing that they were being manipulated, and like perfect circles will end up being cut out of certain spaces within these clouds, and they were being sprayed in like a grid-like pattern by whatever was spraying these things. And it was just all too systematic. It was all just too designed. Like there was a consciousness behind this act, and it was purposeful. You could tell by the way it was all done. It was choreographed, and then you look into what's in them. People did tests about what came down from these things, and they would leave like strange threads on the floor, once they came down. And these weren't the spider webs you normally see on the grass in the morning. These were literally like threads of thick something or other. No spiders present. This weird substance was hitting the ground. Water was having these chemicals in them. Things weren't right. The rain wasn't right anymore. People were testing these things, and they found it had heavy metals in there. It had human blood. It had also just crazy stuff in there that shouldn't be in the sky, which it's made you wonder what was going on. Because there was also this other strange phenomenon that came with the chemtrail theory of Morgellons, and no one could explain how this was happening, but people made the link in the conspiracy world that it's something to do with these chemtrails, that people's bodies were rejecting this thing that they were ended up ingesting through the air, and during the rejection of it, it would burst out through the skin in lesions. And when people looked at them, they were pulling threads out of their skin, and these threads under a microscope were synthetic, semi-organic, biomechanical threads that self-produced and grew and moved with like a consciousness or a reaction to like electrical impulses and things. And it was like some kind of living mycelium within human bodies that was melding to people's nervous systems within us. And it was kind of like mechanical biosynthetic, it was like the concept that we're all kind of inhaling this stuff and being fused with this strange programmable matter of sorts that's self-replicated inside our bodies. And it kind of, if it's made of heavy metals, conductive heavy metals, it's kind of making us like receivers of a sort, some kind of for frequencies. And it's, I don't know if anyone's gone deeper into this. Maybe I have to look into it more myself now, but they were doing something. They were trying to change us. They were doing something to us with this Morgellons, this chemical that was said to be in the chemtrails, And I don't know. I mean, not much has come of it since, but what's interesting is now geoengineering is a perfectly acceptable science that people understand exists, and the science community doesn't deny it. It's called cloud seeding, and it involves high aerosol injection from aeroplanes in the atmosphere, pumping chemicals into the air to produce their own clouds, and also to manipulate and control the weather through frequencies and aerial and satellite arrays. And it's a science. It's a science. And when they were testing this on us, anybody who pointed it out was a crazy conspiracy theorist. But you look into it now, and geoengineering is a real science. You could probably go to university and get a degree in it if you want. There's probably places out there that do this now. And if you were to point it out, I don't think people would think you were crazy anymore. They go, oh yeah, that's what that is. So what? I don't think people think much about it now. And the justification behind it all is obviously going to be something, or probably is something like, well, we're trying to reflect sunlight away from the earth to stop global warming, you know, to stop climate change. We're trying to control the weather to prevent droughts and make it rain where we need to. Things like that. The whole we're playing God type of thing, or, you know, we're messing with things we don't understand to try and save our lives, you know, we're the good guys, that kind of thing. But then you look at the nefarious side of it, like this still yet unexplained phenomena of people getting Morgellons disease, rejecting this strange substance inside our bodies that should not be there. You know, and we probably all have it within us now. You do understand that. These are just the people with Morgellons disease are just the people whose body is rejecting it. But all of us have it in us, you know. And maybe I think, as you know, a lot has happened in the past decade. A lot of our attention has definitely been swayed back and forth all over the place with many topics. But I think we need to remember this one, you know. And when you look up at the sky, just remember they're doing something. They're doing something dodgy, and it's a scary one. This one was a really scary theory when it was around. I remember when I first discovered it, I was terrified of looking up at the sky. You know, and it was this idea that the sky is a very big thing. It's huge. And it's hard to imagine that they could control the weather and do these type of things, you know. But whether or not they can or can't, they're having a bloody good go at it. They're trying the best. And maybe some places in the world are free from it, but I certainly think us, especially people in like England or America or Europe, we've definitely been bombarded with whatever the hell this is, whatever the hell they're trying to do there. And there are whistleblowers who talk about this, you know, there are scientists who have openly spoken about what's in these chemicals. As for the purpose, I'm not sure. That's what I've talked about so far, is the health of humans type of purpose, you know, trying to manipulate humans. But there's also this other theory that it's actually to create kind of like, because metals are reflective, in a sense they're trying to create in the sky like a thin veil, which could be the equivalent of a huge LCD screen in the sky. The whole sky just becomes a projector of sorts. And if this Morgellons is programmable in some respects as well, maybe they can be bioluminescent. I don't know, you know. But there's this other theory that it could be used in the future to project a fake alien invasion, to convince us that aliens have come from out of space here to, I don't know, save mankind from ourselves, or whatever story they want to push on that. I know aliens are quite big in the news right now, you know, and they're always slipping in this idea every now and then of, oh, remember aliens? Oh, they could turn up at any minute. Ooh, you know, the mainstream media is often giving that kind of story and attitude about aliens towards us. But if they were to convince us that aliens really did appear, they would have to make a huge display in the sky, surely, because they've come from space. And people have theorized that the chemtrails was just a preparation for that. Everything they're spraying is to create the correct atmospheric conditions to make it capable of projecting like a giant screen, big huge glowing circles in the sky with psychedelic patterns, or like flying saucers, let's say, you know, something that makes humanity convinced that giant things are in the sky and they must be from space. We all know, if you've done your research by now, that it's all bollocks, and it's just the demons, or fallen angels as well, coming back, revealing themselves to mankind. And that whole lights in the sky display will be to fool us into thinking they're aliens from outer space, when really they are right here on Earth, very terrestrial beings who are just revealing themselves once more. And also obviously the angelic angels who are in the sky, are very well a part of Earth but still up there, you know, will reveal themselves to be aliens, I'm sure. And people say this is all a part of that deception, you know, the chemtrails was about that. And maybe that's true, maybe that is what it's all about, and this whole humans getting affected with stuff is just like a distraction. And maybe it's all of it, maybe it all works in tandem. But, you know, in terms of a nostalgic throwback, chemtrails. Yeah, let's just remind ourselves about that. You know, let's not forget. It's a big part of the conspiracy, and I think it's taken an unfair sideline over the past decade. But I certainly haven't forgotten. I hope you haven't too. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave that there. Thanks for listening. I'll try and do another one of these next week, another topic that we may have all forgot about. But thanks for listening, and as always, God bless.